So, I owe the costume designer of Blood and Water an apology. Yeah, no, I do. Um, when Blood and Water first came out, I wrote a very, I think, very funny, but yeah, I wrote a little blog post that's lost now about how the costume design in Blood and Water failed at being good costume design. Like I felt at the time I felt like it didn't do a good job of enhancing the story in any way and giving us better insight into the characters and where they were, or even showing us the proper passage of time in the show. I just felt like what we were told through the dialogue, through the setting, and just through the basic premise of the show was not congruent with what we were seeing in the costume of most of the characters, especially with regards to the main character and the it girl Fikile. I just felt like, the show was so ambitious, but the costume design really failed to really advance or enhance or further anything in any real tangible way. And now that I've had time to think about it and I've had time to rewatch the show and just to really consider life and grow a little bit as a person, I see that like I was the problem. Like the costume designer was playing chess and I was playing checkers. Like my third eye was closed. I had the inability to see. I had the inability to understand. And for that, like, I am so sorry, whatever your name is, because I'm not going to look it up now, but I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I'm sorry. I thought that the decision to have the characters dressed in like 2018 Cotton On and Factory collections was just silly and cheap and like unrealistic. I thought the fact that like the costume designer didn't seem to understand what a good wig is was an indication of her failing at her job. I thought that the poor makeup and hair choices were just an indication of incompetency or a lack of understanding of teenagers. I thought the fact that we weren't seeing any 2019 or 2020 trends reflected in their outfits was just, poor research and insight, when really like I was the fool. I really was the fool. And I dragged that production for filth, and for that I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Because what I've come to realize now, that in fact Blood and Water's best asset, what takes the story from here to here, is the costume design. Like the costume design is actually freaking genius. Like wow. Like now that I've thought about it, I'm like, how could I be so loud and so wrong for so long? Do you know what I mean? Because I was sitting there like, y'all are saying that this is a show about rich people, but you didn't tell the characters that they don't look like it. And I was there like, this was such a missed opportunity to collaborate with South African fashion designers, South African luxury designers. If you really wanted to convey this like this fully South African production and really show off wealth and like the upper class black people in Cape Town, like, ooh, I have egg on my face now, because I have egg on my face, because now I understand that like the fact that the costume design was seemingly so bad is what makes it so great. I get very pressed about costume design, and you might think it's because like I love fashion and I love clothes, but it's not just that. Like costume design is a very essential part to storytelling. It's like it is actually probably it's probably a more important storytelling device than the actual dialogue, because you can communicate a lot of big complex ideas in the simplest and shortest way possible non-verbally through costume design. Like, so if you do costume design well, it takes a lot of the work out of like providing subtext and hints and foreshadowing in your plot. Like you don't have to have clunky exposition where characters outrightly say weird, like unrealistic things like, yes, little sister. You know what I mean? Like they don't have to explain those relations, because you can tell us those things through the costume design. And also, I mean, other things as well, like set design and the music and everything, but like costume design is very integral. But see, the thing is, my problem with Blood and Water upon first watch was that if the characters didn't spend a lot of time telling me that they're all privileged and rich and in this luxurious world, and if the premise of the show wasn't that, hey, we're entering the glamorous world of Parkhurst College in Cape Town elite, and if the sets and stuff didn't exist to show me that, like, this is high class life, just by looking at the way the characters are dressed, I would not be able to know they weren't anything then other than like teenagers from the year 2014. Like, I would have no insight into who they are as individuals or what sets them apart from one another. I would have no insight into their societal status. I would have no insight into their economic background at all. Like, we never really see any like designer bags or like luxury watches or like expensive jewelry. We never see anything super trendy or like current. We never even see anything like fashion forward, which is fine. I didn't go into Blood and Water expecting it to be the cultural reset that Gossip Girl was, as much as they set themselves up for failure by making that comparison. Like every magazine and like every media publication was like, hey, y'all should watch Blood and Water because it's elite meets Gossip Girl set in Cape Town. And I was like, y'all don't do that to these poor people. Like, don't do that. Like, let the show exist on its own merit. So I never went into the show expecting it to be like this cultural reset. And I still think that as much as fashion is very important to teen dramas, like, it's not always essential. Like, One Tree Hill was a fantastic show, but I have nothing to remark about the way the characters dressed. Dawson's Creek, premium television. I can't really tell you too much about what people were wearing, really. The Vampire Diaries, I don't really have much to say about the way they dressed when they were in high school either. But the difference with those shows is that they weren't about rich people. Like, One Tree Hill was just normal, everyday people living in Tree Hill. But when it comes to shows like Gossip Girl, when we're talking about the hills, because that is fiction, when it comes to 90210, when it comes to the OC, if you're going to talk about rich kids, they kind of have to look like rich kids. And that was my initial problem with Blood and Water, was that, like, y'all are telling me, you're in my ear about, like, y'all, all these kids are rich, but I don't see it. But now I'm realizing that actually, if you look at it closely, the costume design does all the foreshadowing in the show. Like, it is literally, if you want a hint of where everything is going in the show and what's really going on, it's in the costume design. Like, the entire thesis statement of Blood and Water can really be that all that glitters is not gold. And that behind, like, the opulence and the fancifulness of, like, wealth and upper class life, like, there's something corrupt going on. Like, there's a rot, right? And I think the fact that the clothing choices are so jarring and so weird, and also frankly kind of off-putting, are meant to tell us that, like, something isn't right here, right? So, like, Buleng gets to the party, like, in the first episode, and from her first interaction with Fikile, we're supposed to understand from that alone that, like, Fikile is special and she gets everything handed to her, like, a lot easier than everyone else. Like, Buleng is at the bar and she's, like, asking for a drink forever and everyone's ignoring her, but Fikile comes in, like, with one word, she's able to get herself a drink and Buleng a drink. So we're already supposed to see that not only is she, like, special and can she command attention, but she's also kind. But, like, she's also there in that she's there in that awful wig. And I know I'm not supposed to be someone who criticizes wigs, but, like, that wig, that lace had a case. That lace had a case closed, right? It was giving cap wig. And then she's got this, like, really muddy, unblended, glittery eyeshadow look, which just, like, makes no sense, not only for the time period, but also just, like, what young girl is gonna be doing that? And also, it's her birthday party, so, like, if she's not an expert at her own makeup and maybe she's not big on makeup, why wouldn't she just, like, hire a makeup artist if she's that rich, or get one of her other friends to do her makeup? And then she's also just wearing this, like, boring sequence dress, like, from YDE 2012. And I'm like, and then already that's supposed to be our first indication that something is wrong. Like, we're at this rich girl's birthday party and everyone is talking about how special and cool she is, but, like, she doesn't look special, she doesn't look cool. And then the most insidious thing she does, the first insidious thing she does is she looks at Buleng and she's like,
who call you, by the way?
mind you, Buleng's in this nasty, like, unremarkable granny cardigan, which someone just burned a hole into. Someone just ruined it. And Fikile has the nerve to be like, ooh, that's so cute. Like, what a bitch move. What a bitch move. And that's supposed to tell us already, that's supposed to sit in our mind as the viewer that like, this girl is not who she thinks she is. And that's the main thesis. She's not who she thinks she is. She's not who everyone says she is. And that's actually what tells us from jump that it's very reasonable to think that this complete stranger is actually Puleng's kidnapped at birth sister, right? And then I would like to contrast it with the fact that the only other character whose costume design makes sense for her, like whose costume design distinguishes her as an individual character and also makes sense in reference with her personality and like her economic status, is Zama.
When rich people can't be dodgy.
And that when Zama says it, that's foreshadowing, like, and we should believe it because it's coming from our most like visually truthful character. And by the way, Zama has some fantastical outfits, and I love her hair throughout the show. And she's the only one with braids that aren't like pulling on the scalp. But from Zama, we should take that as gospel. That like when she says rich people can't be dodgy, that's telling us that like, girl, if Fikile is supposed to be a rich person and she essentially looks dodgy, that means she's actually not where she's supposed to be. She should be slumming it out, and like I'm just saying slumming it out to be hyperbolic, but she should be slumming it out in middle class life with the Kumalos and not like living this rich girl performance that actually is a farce. And then think about the fact that I can't remember when in the show it happens, but I remember it in the trailer where one of the characters is like talking about Fikile. They're like, she's a genuine influencer, but we never see her influence anyone really. Like, never once in the show do we see her schoolmates trying to be like her, trying to emulate her, trying to dress like her. We never see her even impacting the way Puleng dresses or does her hair. We never even see her having any sort of like real tangible influence over her friends. Like in the first episode, they all kind of laugh at her when she's giving a pretty possible little high school speech about the environment.
Its effects, governmental actions cannot guarantee the complete elimination of this problem. No matter what we do, the sun will keep getting hotter, the cold will keep getting colder.
Like even her close friends don't even buy into the idea of her being an influencer. They're all just kind of going along with this farce because reasons, I guess. And then that's also compounded by the fact that the only time we see her being like influential is when she's on social media, which also for a lot of us as viewers is kind of shorthand for like a false world. Like that's not reality. So if the only time she seems to have some sort of impact on the world is on a platform like Instagram or whatever that social media app is, it's also telling us again that like something's not right. Like this isn't real. This is a farce. Like Puleng, you're in danger, girl. Like, do you know what I mean? All of these are small little hints that the world of Fikile is corrupt and a lie and built on just like dishonesty. The other characters in the show spend a lot of time trying to pretend that like Fikile is this victim, you know, or that like other people are always imposing this like mean girl, snobby girl narrative on her, and she's just really desiring to be seen and to be real.
Why be so nice to me if this is what you thought of me? Fix cheese, just...
But actually, like, she's kind of a terrible person if you think about it. But now I understand that like her wig is basically indicative of like the corruption and the lies and the dishonesty and this deceit going on. Like the fact that her wig is so crusty and so bad is telling us that like, guys, this girl is in trouble. Like her mind is so full of turbulence that it's literally affecting the hair on her head.
Puleng, right? Does Fix really pay that much for her weaves?
And at first, if you're watching, you're like, that's a bit of a weird statement, because if you're all in the same expensive private school, aren't you all probably spending a lot of money on your hair? And also, wouldn't you as another black woman or black girl also understand that like, you know, really good hair is expensive and that obviously like the richest girl in school would be spending a lot of money on her hair? But take a step back, look through it with this new lens, and you understand that she's actually asking, is it true that she spends that much money on her hair because it looks like trash? Like even the other characters, like even the the characters without no names are like, something's not right. Something does not add up. Also, another thing that tells us that like Fikile is actually not a good person. And I think maybe she's not a good person because internally she's so confused and she's dealing with the internal struggle of being the rich girl and then actually probably being the kidnapped at birth sister, right? I think that's what leads to her to kind of being such an unlikable and like morally bankrupt character. I mean, her main motivation in the show is to become head girl and be the best swimmer so she can get a scholarship to some university so she can prove to everyone else that she's more than her parents' money. So one, that need to separate herself from her parents' wealth tells you that there's an internal need for her to separate from that family. But two, it's also the most sinister thing I've ever heard of. Like, she tries to say that she's like some sort of good person, but like, why would you siphon a scholarship away from someone who actually needs it just so you can prove a point? Like, that's a bitch move. That's another bitch move. And then in the club scene, which is like following immediately after she's learned that she's not going to be head girl, that's one of her more possible outfits and one that actually makes more sense with the idea of Fikile being this rich, genuine influencer character. I think it's the costume designer trying to show us that like, now that she's being forced to confront the fact that maybe she isn't good at everything, maybe she isn't that special, she's actually starting to look like an actual modern teenager. Like, now that she's confronted this harsh reality that she's not going to be head girl and she's not going to get the scholarship, and maybe consider the fact why she's not getting that, and that she's dressing better as a way of her maybe getting closer to the truth. Which is that like she's not special, she's not a genuine influencer, and she's not actually who she thinks she is, which is what allows her, once she removes herself from this like unattainable reality or this unattainable fantasy she's presented with, she can actually dress like an actual rich teenager. Like, she's actually better equipped at sort of fulfilling the role, or she's better equipped at looking better. And I think looking good in the show can be sort of, we can kind of equate looking good in the show as being a good character, because like the other characters who dress pretty decently or whose design, like costume design, makes the most sense for their characters are probably one of our more morally correct characters, like Zama, like Buleng's mom, because I mean, for the most part she seems like a pretty decent lady, and also like I simp so hard for Gail. So like, and then I think for the fact that the next time we see her doing something duplicitous and something bad is the next time she is in another fugly outfit. And I think that further actually drives my point home, that when she looks good and when she's dressed in a way that makes sense to who we're being told she is, and also makes sense as who she should be as a character, then she's on the right path. But every time she looks like a hot mess, she's either living in a fantasy, she's not being who she's supposed to be, she's not who she thinks she is, or she's doing something really evil. And then as the show progresses, she just starts to look more raggedy, especially with her hair, which is such a shame because that girl, the actress, was really beautiful. I don't know why they did that to her, but I'm a bit like justice for Kosi. But now I understand why they did that to her, and I'm like, it was for the sake of art, and I can forgive it. It's interesting because also the first time we see her parents, her mom is wearing this like hideous Foschini-esque like floral dress thing. And she's got like the sew-in closure on her weave. And it's all obviously at first glance really weird and confusing. Like, if she's supposed to be this rich, powerful woman, like, why doesn't she have the black woman power bob? Why isn't she wearing like a cool power suit? Why isn't she dressed in some designer? Like, why isn't she wearing some like Tula Cindy? Why isn't she in some like David Tlale? Like, why? I just feel like Fikile's mom is like, should have been the rich aunt aesthetic as a character in the show. Like, that was the perfect place to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was the best time to do that, and that was a flop. But again, it's to tell us that something is not right. And I think even also if you compare Fix's house against the other two rich people houses we see in the show, which is KB's and Chris's, like, it's not giving rich, is it? Really? Like, it's giving upper middle class. It's a cute house, and I know by virtue of being in Cape Town, it's expensive, but like, compared to like that gorgeous view KB has from his bedroom and that like gigantic like beachfront estate that Chris lives on. Like, it's looking a little poor, love. At this time, it's also the culmination of a lot of odd and jarring and strange music choices as well, which I think is again on purpose.
I get buff like John Cena. We used to be cool when I used to come through. I wanna act like John Cena.
Supposed to be weird and off-putting to us as a viewer. The fact that like, I don't know, they place the weirdest Nasty C songs in the weirdest moments that make no sense to like what's going on in the dialogue or the overall plot or like even where the characters are. Like that's the point. We're supposed to sit there as a viewer and be like, wait, that don't feel right, because it's not right. It's not right. And then again, towards the end of the show, when Puleng comes to that dinner party at KB's house, that's actually also one of Fikile's better outfits. She's starting to question like, do I like swimming? Am I really this person I've spent so much time thinking I am? Like, my entire construction of reality is weird. I've lost my relationship with my gross swim coach who probably took advantage of me, and I'm too young to realize it. Right? She's just so lost and so in search of an answer, and that's why she's starting to look better, and the outfit's a bit more streamlined. It's simple, it's one color, it's a clean look, it's a very flattering color for her, and she's edging towards that, but there are things still pulling her back. That's why the wig is still there and it's still looking like that. And I don't know why they keep insisting on tying it into that like tiny little onion tip like ponytail, because like why? Like that wig does not want to be in that ponytail. Stop doing it. Stop it. But that's the point. The wig doesn't want to be there. It wants to be off her head so that her mind can be free. So I think Puleng is very slowly picking up on all these hints throughout the show. And then even for the fact that like that KB is dressed so badly. He's dressed so badly, and a shame. The character's actually pretty nice, and it was kind of nice to see a decent like hot boy himbo character who actually for the most part is a good person, except for that scene where he basically raps Puleng's poetry back to her. Even the fact that he's dressed so badly is supposed to tell us that like, because his dad is the one that's like behind a lot of the corruption around the like adoption and the kidnapping, like that's also again foreshadowing. Like he's supposed to be this like rich young black king, up and coming conscious rapper, you know, he's a skater and he's cool and he's, you know, he's one of the hot boys at school, but he's dressed like that, you know what I mean? Like it's not, I don't buy it. And then also he wore jorts. He wore knee-length jorts, and I won't forgive. I'm sorry. I don't even care if it was for the sake of story. I can't forgive that. I think that it was so disgusting. And it was in a moment when he was trying to get Puleng to be like emotionally vulnerable and like tell her he likes her. And I was just like, girl, you're in danger. Get the hell out of here. Get out, girl. This man is gonna break you. And what did he do a couple episodes later? He was making out with his ex. And then took your virginity the next day. Case closed. What I tell you, it was predicted, it was foreshadowed, it was foreseen in the costume design. I think that by the time we get to the last episode, both Fikile and Puleng have been on such a journey that they're realizing that, like, you know, something is not right in the state of Denmark, right? And we see it in both of them. Like, Fikile becomes even more disheveled, but this time it's very obviously intentional. She's in that like hoodie. She just looks tired and so miserable and sad.
I don't think you're who you think you are, Fikile.
It's like, girl, I know that now because I've been looking at the costume design, and it's been an excellent ride. It's been a fantastic journey. I want to dap up that entire production team. Like that, I think for that reason, I might say that it's almost a better Netflix African original than Queen Sono was. I actually did do a podcast for Ladies Radio where I was talking about why Queen Sono is like one of the best TV shows ever, which you should listen to. I'll link it below. But I do think that like after like reanalyzing and re-looking at the Blood and Water costume design with my third eye open, and starting to realize that all these weird inconsistencies with set and music and costume design are actually intentional artistic decisions, I can actually say that it's probably one of the best shows we've had come out this year, like honestly. And I cannot wait for season 2. I'm so excited. Anyway, that's the end of my rant. Well, that's the end of my realization. And I just want to say shout out to everyone who has been sharing and commenting and engaging with my past 2 videos. I'm a little bit too cool to say how much I really appreciate it and that it really means a lot to me, but it does.